Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX?
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
Empire of the Suns.
The Empire of the Suns podcast is brought to you by Sonic. Drive to your nearest Sonic location and don't forget to order your half-price drink or slush anytime in the Sonic app.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellen Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. What's up, man?
How are you? We are celebrating a big day today where there are geckos on the revealed court for the City Edition games for the Suns. That's why we are podcasting, obviously. Very important gecko update here.
I don't know, man. I saw one grainy photo of the jerseys 3 months ago, and they look pretty bad. I'm going to judge my entire opinion off that, actually. They look cool. I really like them.
I'm
a court guy normally.
Yeah.
I'm a court guy normally, where I want to see it on the court first, like see the jerseys in action before grading them too heavily. But they usually look better than the league, which, you know, we've been doing this for 10 years now. But
only complaint is I wish Saguaro was more prominently featured. There's probably a graphic design reasoning it's not, because I think it was like behind the numbers on the All-Star jerseys in 95, something like that, but they're just like on the belt buckle. But minor complaints, you know.
The Phoenix Suns are 9-3, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
It is a good time for the Phoenix Suns currently, being 9-3. But I think the majority of our episode is going to be reacting to the injury news they're on and just kind of looking at the state of the team right now with the rest of the Western Conference in mind. So this is going to tilt a little bit more pessimistic by nature, and we'll kind of get into our reasons why. But this is not necessarily... there's not too much to follow up on from last week's episode, which is where we got into everything that was going well with this team. And this is not meant to be like the opposite of that, where we're going into the negative per se. But there's just a couple of things to watch out for over the next like 2 to 3 weeks. And I think my main takeaway here is that by December, I think we're going to have a much better idea of like where the Suns lie in the pecking order right now. Because I think it's easy to look at them being 9-3 and saying they're one of the best teams in the league. And while I agree with that, there are a couple of different factors going on. The first of which is that they're injured right now. They're going through some injuries. Kevin Durant over last weekend, so we're nearly a week through this 2-week reevaluation period, left calf strain, the same calf that he strained over the summer before playing for Team USA. You hate to see a repeat injury sort of pop up there. Bradley Beal missed yesterday's loss against the Kings with a left calf contusion. He left the game with about 7 minutes and 15 seconds left on Tuesday. Did not return. Was not one of those injuries, Kevin, where we saw the injury happen and then he had to limp off the court. It was just he checked out for a rest and then he wasn't seen on the bench. And then we found out later it was because his calf was giving him issues. And then Grayson Allen, who earlier in the season was dealing with some Achilles soreness that led to him having a slow start. He had a sore right hamstring that had him sit for Wednesday. Jusuf Nurkic also had a left ankle that was bothering him that forced him to initially play the first half of the game before exiting in the second half and then miss another game as well on Tuesday. So this team is going through some injuries right now. And the way that I talked about it yesterday after the Kings loss, which we're not really going to get into because it was what it was. Like they were severely shorthanded. And the way I phrased it in there is when you're down 2 of your 3 best players and your team is designed like this, it doesn't really matter if you have a deep team. It just doesn't. And especially when you're missing someone like Grayson, not to say that Grayson's loss was more important than Brad and Kevin last night. What I'm saying is Grayson is so valuable to your team because when you don't have Brad or when you don't have Kevin, having that guy who is your quote unquote 6th starter, 7th starter, whatever you want to call Royce and Grayson, those guys are so valuable for moments like that. And they were just really shorthanded in that game. They put up a really good fight that I thought was encouraging. I know that it got away from them late and the Kings were getting whatever they wanted offensively, but it's the injuries are already starting to come in. This is 4 for Brad now that we know about already, a dozen games in. That's not where, as much as it has been me on this podcast just raving about the way Brad has played, and I'll continue to do so. It's also not good that it's been 4 different injuries a dozen games in.
And I want to put on the KD and the Beal points that the calf injury, like, you're especially afraid with that guy because if you remember 2019 when he was at the Warriors, like, that led to Achilles. Like, they misdiagnosed it or diagnosed calf, and then he injured his Achilles. So that's like, maybe there's no medical reason to be fearful, but as a fan who doesn't know anything about these things, those things are close together on your body. With Brad, like, the Sunday game against the Kings, he also kind of looked hurt. Do you know, I don't know if that was asked post-game, but like if that led into or is related to his other injury that popped up before the Utah game? Yeah.
So he told Dwayne, so the other 2 more injuries we have to catch you up on with Brad, in case this is your one medium of catching up on the Suns, is he at some point in the, I want to say 4th quarter of the OT loss in Phoenix against Sacramento on Sunday, he tweaked an ankle because he like spent like a minute hunched over before a timeout got called, and clearly something was bothering him. And then later in the game in overtime, DeMar DeRozan rolled up on his left knee unintentionally, of course, just one of those basketball plays. And Brad reacted in a way that he was seriously hurt or seriously in pain. Fortunately for the Suns, at least from this vantage point, it appears to be that he was just seriously in pain and not seriously injured, because he went on to play the next game on Tuesday. But he told Dwayne Rankin of the Arizona Republic after the game when he left that he felt like it was potentially him compensating a bit for the calf, which is I absolutely loathe I've had a similar injury. Like, I've torn my Achilles before, so I know what Kevin Durant went through. And it's like you kind of do to some extent, but anyone has had that experience where you like sprain your knee or twist your ankle or whatever, and then all of a sudden something on your in your other leg is starting to hurt a couple days later, and then you realize like, oh yeah, I've been walking differently because, and you can imagine as a hyper athletic human being, how that can affect that whole process.
Yeah. So just a little, like, I don't feel great about either of those things, but you're going to deal with them. I guess I wanted to hear your take, and I'll give mine about the role players, and especially again missing Grayson. Like, then you're asking Royce O'Neal, who he had a really great streak to begin the season but has been cold to shooting, limited offensively. You're asking Ryan Dunn to hit a bunch of threes. He took 7 in the last game, only hit 2. So these things start piling up, right? And then you start to see the flaws in the roster. You start to see defensively at point guard, well, you need Tyus Jones and Monte Morris to play now because of the injuries, but are they getting picked on defensively by like a underrated now point guard in De'Aaron Fox? To me, he's underrated. So you start to see the flaws, and I guess from your vantage point, the last 3 games, especially without KD, what do you think are the big, like, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Here's the hole that's starting to show up. Like, where are you maybe most concerned there?
With Royce, I looked that up, 5 for 19 from 3 in his last 3 games. And he's always been a streaky shooter by trade. He's still been great in every single game that he's played so far. But yeah, you're spot on, because what starts to happen is when one of these guys, just when Kevin isn't playing, you're therefore asking more out of these guys who, like Tyus Jones, is solid for what they need out of him. But when Book was getting trapped early last night and they were looking to like, okay, Tyus, you're on that side of the floor, go run a 2-man game. It's like, Tyus isn't going to put up 25 that night. Like, that's just not his game. And he's not that level of point guard, as much as I have respect for the role that he plays and the player that he's been in the league. That's not his game. That's not Monte Morris's game. You got 25 out of Josh Okogie, who continues to, over the last 2 years, whenever he gets an opportunity, especially 2 years ago, always takes advantage of it, and he played great. But the starters outside of Book shot 5 of 25 from 3. And when Book is getting the 2018 traps on him and the 2018 crowds on him and needs guys to make shots, it's gonna really rely on Booker over this time, and Beal, to make tough shots and have the ball, but just one more of them being out there. Like if Brad's thing is just another game or two and they're just being extra precautionary, that would be a big deal for them, because that opens up the gravity for him, and that opens up the gravity obviously by default for Book, because Book was 6 of 16 last night. The slow start continues, Kevin. The slow start continues, which I think is like a narrative that happened between last episode and this episode, so we didn't even talk about it last episode. But I read off the stats, I believe, on that pod, comparing like his 8-game start to other 8-game starts, and like it's the same thing. He's fine. Believe me, he's fine.
He had he called it food poisoning. It might have been lingering and longer than that, and also like that's just like we just mention it and move on. Do you see the weird on a certain social media platform that's not Blue Sky? Welcome to everyone on Blue Sky, by the way. We're both on it. That like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, like fan bases are clashing for some reason because some of them are overly critical of the other. Like there's just a lot of dumb stuff on the internet that I'll digress on that point. But yeah, Book's going to be fine. I think I want to go back and re-highlight what you said, and you put this on Twitter too. Like this team is top heavy still. Like its depth does not mean it's built to withstand injuries to the stars. And obviously like they're probably very aware of that. That's why they're being precautionary with all these injuries and resting guys and stuff. So, like, we're just here to learn a lot about this team, to reflect back on what we're talking about here. Can we talk about centers, by the way? Because this has been an interesting run with centers, unless you have other points about what we were just talking about.
Well, I would just end on Book, like the 6 of 16 shooting night, and like these following shooting nights are going to come for him if KD is out or if Brad is out. It's just like extreme shot making games, and we've seen him have a ton of those over his career where he's been making the shots, but when those shots aren't going in, like when Kevin Huerter is face guarding him from 20 feet out, and Book knows if I take 2 feet in, the second defender is coming. It's like, okay, I'll just settle for the 20-foot fall away on the baseline. Those are the types of shots that he's going to have to hit in games like that, and he just wasn't hitting them in that game. And the traps that we talked about for so much after the Dallas series, like that kind of stuff just pops back up again. So it is what it is. But this was, I think the difficult thing to do, and I don't want to do too much on it, but that was the first game last night, to your point on the centers, where it's like, this is a team that saw the deep drop and was like, oh yeah, we're gonna be in there. Sacramento shot 18 of 22 at the rim, and then on short mid-range, which Clean the Glass defines as like 5 to 14 feet. So think floaters, touch shots, shorter middies, things like that. They were 16 of 22, I believe. So you put all that together, and they were just eating inside, and it became to a point where you thought, like, I know Domantas Sabonis is on the floor, but you might just want to put Oso in there because of the defensive deficiencies that were popping up. But again, I thought they felt Brad and Kevin's and Grayson to some extent, their absence more defensively in that game than offensively, to be honest. Because like defensively, they were 5 steps back from what they've been all year, whereas offensively it was 2 or 3. Yeah,
that's a really good way to put it. Like, we are not giving them enough credit for how good the defense has been. I mean, I know we spent a lot of time last podcast talking about it, but last night was a really good example of, there's a drop-off with the starting lineup, and then like the offense, like legit, I think Ty Washington was put in there to give offensive juice because we knew what they were doing to Book. Like, you're already asking your two-way player, because he's the best like pure scorer, to like give you a little offensive juice. That's not good, and at least it's not a disrespect to the other role players that are in the rotation already, but it's just a fact of who they are, their identity, their DNA. And then when you're asking Ty Washington to go in there and shoot a bunch and kind of take a little pressure off Book, you're also like getting that level of defensive performance, and that's kind of also where it kind of tanked that game. So yeah, just things tumble down the hill when you have a little problem starting up top, I guess, is what we're seeing here. And again, nothing panic-worthy, nothing super surprising, but we're getting to see different things. And I did like seeing the different center rotations going back to Sunday's first Sacramento game, just because it was like, okay, Nurk, you're either hurt or you're not working. Sabonis was doing pretty well early. And then they actually had a bit of success. Like Plumlee played really well. Oso held up and at least was doing enough, and also offensively really moving the ball well, like we've kind of seen from him. So I think the one positive sign through all this is the center rotation. Like, they're not good at certain things like blocking shots, but they are very unique and diverse, and if one guy's not working, you can flip the switch, go with someone else, and see if they're going to work out.
Yeah, and it was the first game that Kevin missed, I believe, was a Sacramento game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
When they had a moment to go small, and I was like, going small works much better when you have Kevin Durant on the floor when you're going small. So that's again. And that's proven to be, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm guessing that there is the percentage of time they've spent with Kevin at the 5, or just no center on the floor and Kevin is on the floor, compared to the last 2 years combined. Like, the minute total, like, might be up there already, like might be within range of catching it already. Like, I'm guessing it's really that close. So not having that gear to go to as well is there. It's an interesting remaining 4 games. This Oklahoma City game coming up on Friday. Some of you will have watched that game by the time you're listening to this. If you're a couple of days behind, we don't judge you. We try and keep it in the flow as always, but it was one we were super excited for to watch. But OKC doesn't have a center, and then their backup center, who's a 6'4" guard named Alex Caruso. He didn't play in their last game. Maybe he plays tomorrow. And then, of course, the Suns will be shorthanded to a certain extent. And that is like the type of game where you look at how their offense was just kind of jumbled up, and how Oklahoma City is on a record pace right now for forcing turnovers, and you're on the road as well. They're on this road trip, man. Like, I'm going to try and say this in a way where it's like, I'm not trying to come across as snobby genuinely when I just say, when you cover the team and you get like up close every day, you have a greater appreciation and have some insight on some things that you just don't from a fan perspective. Like, I think I feel that way. I felt that way even after like covering a few Cardinals games this year. Like, I viewed things a little bit differently after seeing it from that lens. And something that I always say is, like, these road trips, man, like, look at where they are physically going. They're going from Utah to Sacramento all the way up to Oklahoma City. Then they go up to Minnesota on the first game of a back-to-back, and then go all the way back down to Phoenix on the second game of a back-to-back against Orlando. Like, that is not easy, and they have not had – it was kind of a weird couple of days where you're like, oh, the Suns are great, but they're not blowing teams out. And, like, wouldn't it be great to get a blowout to get some rest in? And that is going to catch up to them on this road trip, I fear, for them. So I'm very curious to see how these remaining 4 games go in this slate of a dozen straight games where they didn't have more than a day off between games. It is OKC on Friday, in Minnesota on Sunday. They come back home to play Orlando on Monday, and then it is the Knicks on that Wednesday. And then they have 5 days off. The NBA Cup schedule gets like really weird. There's only one NBA game tonight, and it's Mavs Jazz, just because they're trying to get the NBA Cup games all sorted. And I'm sure there was a reason why the back-to-backs were Tuesday, Wednesday instead of Thursday, Friday. I don't know exactly, but all of that is to say, this is a really interesting like week or two coming up, like I said, because the West might even look better than we thought.
Yeah, and other teams are dealing with injuries. Like you said, Chet's out for the Thunder. I just saw D'Anthony Melton, who I think he's been playing a bit for the Warriors, like everyone else on the Warriors is playing a lot. He has an ACL issue, not torn, but something there. Orlando's without Paulo, so they at least get a little relief as far as like not facing these teams at full strength. I know they're not playing the Warriors, but there's injuries across the league right now, and I think my whole thing is like, it was great to get out to that fast start. Not that it's as representative about where they are, but more just they didn't have a stretch like that last year, or any, like if you have a couple of those stretches even, then that could pay huge dividends if you drop a game here or there, if you have a tough road trip to finish this out right now. So yeah, I think they're in a good spot. We're gonna get some tough games for them upcoming here. A lot of good teams though. Yeah, I mean, just on their schedule, not even just in the West.
So I share these numbers just with a big old disclaimer that they do not function well with this few amount of games. Like that, it's that type of thing where like people are sharing lineup data after 2 games, and it's like that you need like a decent kind of sample size. But Clean the Glass does this thing where they point out like expected wins, and one that they have for the Suns right now is that they have won 2.8 more games than you would expect given what their efficiency numbers are on offense and defense. Like they have a formula that kind of tabulates all that. That's the number 1 mark in the league. So they kind of have them at more of a 500 base team. And just to be clear, on Clean the Glass's data, which eliminates garbage time, the Suns are 13th in offense and 15th in defense right now. And those numbers are going to shift heavily over the next couple of games and weeks because the sample size is so low. What they do is, however, they can go into all the efficiency data with the numbers that the teams are putting up, offense, defense, the spread, all that kind of stuff, and then look at how many games you're supposed to win in a season based off of that. Right now, it has 5 teams winning at least 60 games. Like, that's not going to happen. I don't think the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to win 71 games and Boston's going to win 68. I don't think that's going to happen. But based on where the Suns are in their efficiency, they have them 12th in the West right now at 42 wins on the year.
Yeah.
I do not think that is going to happen, to be clear, but I say that to emphasize that the Golden State Warriors are 6th in offense and 4th in defense. The Memphis Grizzlies are 5th in offense and defense. The Houston Rockets are 14th in offense and 3rd in defense. Sacramento, who we just saw twice, 8th in offense, 11th in defense. Dallas, 10th in offense, 7th in defense. Even Denver has really recovered and is starting to see some stuff from the young guys we've brought up the last 2 years. They're 4th in offense, 19th in defense. They've also got Minnesota and the Clippers and the Lakers ahead of the Suns. I don't necessarily see that, to say the least. But the point being, if you've been kind of casually viewing the West for the first 2 to 3 weeks, like I was going through these numbers yesterday, and I was like, the only team with a top 5 offense and defense prior to yesterday's games was Memphis. And I was like, what? Aren't they like, yeah, they don't have Vince Williams still. Like, they don't have Gigi Jackson still. Hasn't mattered. They've looked like Jaws going through some stuff, like some hamstring stuff or whatever that was giving him issues the first 2 to 3 weeks. But Houston's off to a really great start. They're 8-4. Memphis is 7-5. The Warriors have, of course, been one of the bigger talking points along with the Thunder. They're 9-2. The Thunder are 10-2. Like, Dallas is 5-6, but they're top 10 in offense and defense, and they're 5-6. So it's like one of those like baseball things where the 22 game, it's not as extreme as like the 22 game winner with a 4.2 ERA or whatever, but it's kind of along those lines where we're so early in right now with the games and how they're swinging that the offense and defense numbers are pretty interesting. And that's not to say that I believe that the Suns 9-3 start is fraudulent, as some people will hear this and think that I'm inferring that. Like, I'm excited about, for many reasons, this potential transition we're dealing with in social media, just because when I tweet something, people think I mean a certain thing. It's like, no, there's no hidden message. I'm just saying a thing. And it's like, no, I'm just presenting numbers that I find interesting. And it's interesting that from an efficiency perspective, 1, the West is like insane right now. And 2, that the Suns are in the middle of the pack on offense and defense. And that has them, for now, pretty far behind from what a lot of teams in the West are off to a start with right now.
It's that they have a lot to work on. Again, we said that even before this recent stretch of injuries, but I'll pull this analogy for you. I saw a story on the Big 12 football conference, which, by the way, is that season's coming to an end in 3 weeks. And basically it was, here's what the league looks like now. It's very competitive, a lot of great teams, not of terrible teams, not many really, really, really good teams. And then it was presented with, here's the records of this conference if every one-score game was flipped. And there are a lot of one-score games in that league. And it basically was like, oh, the second-place team is down at 12th. The fourth-place team is down at 14th. Like, that's what the Suns' kind of season has gone with, is they've just won a lot of close games, as people have complained about them being close. The bad news is Like, they have stuff to work on, and you mentioned the numbers show that. The good news is they won those games because their best players closed out clutch games and were really good in them. So, like, that's where we're getting at here. Like, if you tape up all of the little issues, you work through it, you have a long season, as long as those guys are back and healthy at the end of the season, I'm sure this team will be fine.
Yeah, and fine meaning like 54, 55 wins. Like, they're still, like, if I had to guess right now, they're going to land in like the low to mid 50s for wins. I'm not changing any evaluation, but it's just like we're a couple of weeks out from these numbers staying the same, where we're like, oh, okay, like, is this more of where they're going to be at this point in the season, especially with some injuries, or are they off to as hot of a start as we would be led to believe just by those old wins and loss numbers? Hey, we got something special to tease for next week, and I say that, and only 4% of our audience cares, and that might even be auspicious of me to guess. I'm going to Duke, Arizona.
There are possibly what? Oh, man. Do you want to count all the NBA prospects in that game?
I don't know Duke's team enough. I know that they've got like a center that's really exciting, and then they got Cooper Flagg, but that's all I know.
I looked at ESPN's best available list this morning. So you got Cooper Flagg, probably number 1 pick, like very likely. Who you got? The center, whose name I will not try to pronounce. He's a lottery pick. Con Kupel. I don't know how to pronounce his name either. We're going to have to do research before you head out there, buddy. Tyrese Proctor, I don't know if he's like a second-round pick. Foster, and then there probably is like a couple more guys on the bench, but they basically have like 7-man rotation or something of guys who are NBA prospects. Arizona's got a couple possibly lottery guys with KJ Lewis, Caleb Love are probably second-rounders if they're lucky. So it should be fun for you. It sounds like attendance is going to be good from national media and scouting. I'm sure there are going to be a ton of scouts. So rub elbows with those scouts. Yeah,
I'm getting squeezed in, and I'm just glad to be in the building. I haven't been back since there's probably a podcast episode we did about this. I went and watched Markelle Fultz against Arizona, and then just that same week he came to Tempe, so I covered that game as well, and he looked awesome because Markelle Fultz was awesome in college. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
Not really going for any draft scouting. Just I've been really bad about going to U of A games. Like, that's the last U of A game I've been to. Like, I haven't been to Vegas for like the Pac-12 tournament, or we've just been working during Sun season. There's this break in the schedule that we mentioned, so I'm going to be out there, and I'm really looking forward to it. So we'll have to do a weekend or following Monday version of our next pod, and then end it with Cats Talk and how the trip went and how Cooper Flagg is a fraud. I don't know.
I'm going to clip that for the social media accounts where everyone takes things as they should be taken, as they're meant to be taken. That's what we've learned here.
Why are we moving, Kev? Why are people making accounts on the other thing? I don't understand.
I don't understand the timing, to be honest. Something must have happened in the world, but it also was like a week after something happened in the world. So,
did you know Brian Windhorst said this one thing on his podcast that doesn't include the video clip of it to provide the context, and you can see it right now and overreact to it on your timeline on this website? You can.
Maybe we should get rid of social media like Australia. Maybe we should just do that.
I think they're on it, personally.
Or you have to pass a test to be able to post there.
Yeah. I just want to talk about Survivor, That's all I want to do on Twitter these days.
Yeah. I already dumped my Twitter. I gave up my Twitter being informational and thoughtful a long time ago, buddy. It's fun.
Oh, no, I'm long past that. It was just the communal aspect I really enjoyed at a time. But we are so far past that now, and I think that's just what people are trying to get out while they can, because look, Blue Sky will just turn into the same thing probably 5 years later. It's just circle of life.
It's from like
okay, bud.
Movie. Okay.
We'll be back next week. A really fun patch of games to talk about. Like we just like kind of went through the schedule, but like if you think about that, like the Knicks will be fun to see. We'll see our old bud Mikal. We'll say hi to him. And all those games. So we'll see where the team is at again. They're on a 5-day break after that. So somewhere in that break, we'll be chatting with you guys. And until then, thanks for listening. Goodbye.